Ooh, oh boy, howdy. I come to you with some good news and some bad news. The good news is they actually legit fixed the Reapers, and now these dudes generate an insane amount of corpses, drastically increasing the overall ability to use minions as starter utility vessels on any build that you're playing at the beginning of a season, as well as an amazing tool for summoner builds again. The bad news is I inadvertently got the Necromancer nerfed, and this one is going to be a little bit interesting to try to describe, but I'll try to get you there as smoothly as possible. This one stings exceptionally hard because I actually patted myself on the back when I first saw this patch note here, and let me just go ahead and read it to you in case you're not looking at the screen. Fixed an issue where Thorns was not consistent when applying Lucky Hit. Example, Thorns could trigger Abhorrent Decrepify, but not Hewed Flesh. Now, why would I be patting myself on the back with this? Well, this very bug right here is one that I personally reported to the developers, and I know I'm the one who put it into their hands and ultimately got this changed. Now, why is it a problem? Isn't it great? Abhorrent Decrepify used to be able to trigger it off of Thorns, but Hewed Flesh couldn't, even though they effectively read the same way verbiage-wise. And instead, it should all now work, right? Thorns should now trigger Hewed Flesh. Well, it doesn't. And that's real rough. But here's the worst part. It also doesn't trigger Abhorrent Decrepify anymore. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk back out here, go find some wolves, put on a single piece of armor with a very, very small amount of thorns. I put a single crude emerald in here. I have a bunch of lucky hit chance on my rings, as well as on my gloves. And then I'm also going to use Black River. Black River is going to double how many ranks I have in Hewed Flesh. And Hewed Flesh typically says, with 3 ranks in it, you have a whopping 12% chance to generate a corpse whenever your damage applies to a target. And instead, now with the additional 3 ranks, I have 24%. Now, the reason why Hewed Flesh and Abhorrent Decrepify theoretically should work the same way is because they have particular verbiage that changes how this lucky hit chance works. For Abhorrent Decrepify, enemies hit while afflicted with Decrepify have a chance to reduce your cooldowns. This means that even your minions can trigger Abhorrent Decrepify, and before this change, Thorns on your minions also would trigger Decrepify, so that you would get massive cooldown reductions by just having your minions run into a pack of things and then get hit by a bunch of AoE effects. The bug that I reported was that Hewed Flesh, which just says your damage has a chance to create a corpse, works for just about everything the Necromancer has available to it, except for Thorns Damage, which should be read as your damage since it scales off of you. So when I reported this, I thought, hey, cool, if they fix it, now Thorns will trigger Hewed Flesh, and we'll gain this as an additional source of generating corpses. But let's go ahead and just find some monsters, and then we can get attacked. We'll put on our very small amount of Thorns, and I'll talk us through what the expected outcome was going to be, and why it is terribly sad that we did not get that. Abhorrent Decrepify merely requires that an enemy be hit, and that is, again, able to trigger off of your Thorns, able to trigger off of your minions hitting monsters, and was able to trigger off of your minions conferring Thorns damage onto a target, and it made it an incredibly powerful tool. The big issue was that Hewed Flesh did not work similarly, even though Hewed Flesh merely requires you to do damage to the target, which allows it to be triggered by things that normally don't trigger Lucky Hit. Now the problem is, in the fix that they brought to the game, they actually removed the first functionality as well. Thorns seemingly will not trigger any lucky hit, or at least any lucky hit that is available on the Necromancer itself. Now this may be different for other classes, but sadly I don't have a high enough level tune to be able to test it on them. But let me just go ahead and show you Abhorrent Decrepify working, and the fact that it actually doesn't work anymore, and why this is a huge blow to the Necro. So we're going to use Army of the Dead here as a massively long cooldown, so that I have enough time to be able to chit chat with you about the fact that we got heinously nerfed with this very small change. And while it can ultimately be what the desired outcome was, I think that we need to get something back to re-empower this in some way. So here I have a metric ton of wolves, and we'll go ahead and let them hit me for the entire length of this 50 seconds. And I promise you that if you were to watch back this video, starting from when I just said that, and then skip forward 50 seconds, we would see the exact ending of the Army of the Dead effect, as opposed to seeing some kind of accelerated cooldown of it by the use of Decrepify. So we'll just kind of stand here. If you really want to, I might even be like kind of cheesy here and just add in like a timestamp literally from one to the other, just so that you can all see it in real time. But yeah, Thorns is no longer triggering Abhorrent Decrepify, meaning that as you run through a dungeon, a nightmare dungeon, heck, even using it in the gauntlet in some circumstances, and just used to get these free triggers every once in a while, basically for almost nothing, either putting a single gem into your armor, just naturally having thorns on something like the Ring of Men down, which naturally has thorns, or picking up a single point of spiked armor that recently buffed awesome passive, which enables you to be able to get free armor from it now. It just doesn't work anymore, but it used to. And that means that minion builds that were able to very quickly reduce their cooldowns from the massive amounts of thorns triggering just don't have that ability anymore. While your minions hitting targets will still reduce cooldowns from Abhorrent Decrepify, the Thorns no longer will, and that was more than half of the total engine's ability to be able to output cooldown reduction. So that's just a stupid nerf that kind of nobody was expecting. And again, sorry, didn't think that this is what they were going to do with this. So apparently it was unintentional for Thorns to be able to trigger Abhorrent Decrepify, even though Abhorrent Decrepify just says when the target gets hit. And now it also doesn't trigger Hewed Flesh, which it never did. The reason why I started off with that like quick note about Reaper skeletons is because I basically realized I couldn't trust my first read of any of these patch notes. I had to go through and go, wait a minute, does this really say what I think it does? And again, luckily Reapers generate a ton of corpses. I'll just go ahead and show you that. It's actually kind of hilarious how quickly they generate corpses. At first, I actually thought it was like overproducing and that there was some kind of like secondary system that was happening that I wasn't quite aware of. But those dudes, man, they sure slap corpses out of bosses real quick. There we go. Bang, bang, boom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's getting hard to see them. Hold on. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. You get the idea. At least the Reapers are legitimately generating corpses. But yeah, this has like a weird side effect on the overall power of the Necromancer. I think that where people are probably most aware of Thorns being used in this way for reducing cooldown was in Abattoir of Zir. You would see all of the top builds, or at least ones who were aware of this tech, putting a single point into spiked armor, just to be able to get this additional lucky hit chance, which was super helpful since the majority of the Bloodseekers that you would fight had a bunch of overlapping AoE damage effects. So being able to trigger Abhorrent Decrepify off of that, the moment that you came out of Blood Mist, which is a really, really good way of maintaining like permanent uptime on Blood Mist and Bone Storm, etc. And now that's just gone. Where I was fully intending for them to add the functionality to Hewed Flesh, since it is your damage, I don't understand why this doesn't work. Sincerely, I don't understand. Now, I know that Thorns has to have like a 0% lucky hit chance because it's not meant to trigger things like Ring of Men down, right? Only skills are meant to trigger Ring of Men down. Although right now you could probably still use Metamorphosis just like you could in Season 2 to be able to trigger this. Although I haven't tested that in particular. I just assume it works the same. But yeah, we actually lost power. We lost relative power. We lost probably one of the more interesting tools that the Necromancer had for being able to optimize in interesting ways. And I'm just incredibly sad. And on top of that, I don't really feel like we were compensated in any such way. It's frustrating. I'll be honest with you. I know generally my image on the internet is a bit of a corporate shill, and I get that, right? I work with Blizzard all the time. I think they have a really great game here. And generally when I make these videos and I make this content and I do my testing, it's not just for the views. I want to enjoy playing this game. I want other people to be able to enjoy playing this game. So when I tell them about these bugs, when I put in this data, when I put in this time and effort testing, it's to get to a better game state. And sadly, situations like this can occur where we were benefiting from a bug that we weren't quite aware of, but it had been happening for so long, you just assume that that's how the game worked, and anything that didn't work that way must be the bug instead. When in reality, apparently Thorns was never meant to trigger Abhorrent Decrepify. And that stinks. I honestly think that the Necromancer just lost a bit of power across the board, and it's one of those innocuous things where a lot of people probably weren't quite aware of it or couldn't quite put their finger on it or weren't necessarily relying on that in some interesting way. But Abattoir of Zir, highest pushing build, sure needed it, and it's kind of upsetting that that's just gone from the game now when it's been there since launch. So yeah, let me know down in the comments what you think. I'd really like to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'm sad that I had to report on it, but hopefully it allows you to make better informed decisions. I know I need to go update my build guides where I was using spiked armor for this exact purpose, so hopefully I can get that out very quickly so that nobody is misled. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.